In the summer of July 2016, a brutal murder shocked the city of Bel Air, Houston, Texas community. Don and Antonio Armstrong, a beloved couple, were found dead in their home, their lives cut short in a senseless act of violence. The two had been shot while deep in their sleep, and their assailant was yet to be captured. However, their son heard the shouts from another room, and so he called 911. As soon as the emergency team arrived in the house, they learned that the security cameras had not been tampered with yet, and also no one had left or entered the house for hours. As investigators dug deeper into the case, a shocking twist emerged. The couple's 16-year-old son was accused of the murders. What followed was a complex legal battle, with the twists and turns and numerous unanswered questions. In this video, we will take you through the tragic events, the investigation, and the trial that followed, exploring one of Houston's most heartbreaking cases. In 2016, Houston was a rapidly growing and diverse city, reflecting both its economic importance and cultural richness. The population at the time was around 2.3 million in the city proper, with the metro area reaching about 6.7 million. Houston was and continues to be a major hub for people all over the world, contributing to its multicultural character. Demographically, Houston in 2016 was one of the most diverse major cities in the United States. The Hispanic population was the largest group, making up around 45% of the population, followed by African Americans, who comprised about 23%. The white non-Hispanic population was around 25%, with a growing Asian community, particularly from Southeast Asia, making up to around 6% of the population. The city's ethnic makeup was one of its defining features, and it had a rich blend of cultures, languages, and traditions. For John and Antonio, this is the place they called home. Dawn Armstrong was a successful insurance agent, and her husband, Antonio Armstrong, was a former linebacker who played professionally for the Miami Dolphins. Together, they were a well-established, loving family in Houston. Antonio and Dawn's lives appeared stable, and they were described as having a happy marriage life and providing a good life for their children. They were known in their community as kind, hardworking individuals, but tragically, all that came to an end in the early morning hours of July 29, 2016. For Antonio, he grew up in Texas and had studied at A&M under a full scholarship to play football. He played with the Miami Dolphins up to the mid-1990s, but later sustained an injury. However, it never stopped him from being a professional player. He later joined the CFL, the Canadian Football League, for a period of 6 years. The couple had opened up a gym in Bel Air. Antonio worked there as a personal trainer. He was also a motivational speaker and a general health and fitness advocate. They had been blessed with 3 beautiful children, 2 sons and a daughter, with Josh as the oldest, who wasn't Antonio's biological son, but was from Dawn's previous relationship. Their second child was 16 years old, Armstrong Jr., nicknamed as AJ, and Kira, their daughter, was the last born. AJ, just like his father, was a passionate football player back in campus. On the morning of July 29, 2016, authorities were called to Armstrong family home in Houston after reports of gunshots. Inside, they discovered the bodies of Dawn and Antonio Armstrong. Both had been shot multiple times while they were sleeping in their beds. At the time of the murders, the 16-year-old son was the only other person in the house. He was initially considered a potential witness, but his actions immediately after the discovery of the bodies raised suspicions. He claimed he had been asleep when the shooting occurred and that he woke up to find his parents dead. His parents used to sleep in the master bedroom, Kira in the hallway, and for AJ, he had a separate room, which he recently had shared with Josh. Josh had begun his own life, renting an apartment for himself just a few weeks ago. In that fateful morning, AJ had called 911 stating that he ran downstairs to his parents' master bedroom, only to find that the door was open, which was something his parents never did, leaving the door open. Despite his claim of innocence, the investigation quickly shifted towards the son as a suspect. It was soon revealed that the Armstrong son had a history of behavioral issues, including a strained relationship with his parents. As police continued their investigation, they uncovered unsettling details about the Armstrong's family life. It was revealed that the son had been struggling with emotional and behavioral issues for some time, including issues with authority in school. This led many questions whether he could have been involved in the deaths of his parents. Furthermore, there were financial issues with the Armstrong family, which added to the complexity of the case. John and Antonio had reportedly been facing challenges in their marriage, though they had not publicly revealed the extent of these problems. In the days following their murders, the investigation focused on the son, who was known to have been in the home when the murders occurred. His actions, including his attempt to cover his tracks and his behavior during the investigation, drew increasing suspicion. The police stated that during his arrest, he appeared emotionless, not moved by the death of his mother or the life of his father, who was not yet dead at the time but was fighting in the hospital. Just days after the murders, the Armstrong son was arrested and charged with the murders of both his parents. The charges were based on a combination of physical evidence, his inconsistent statements during the investigation, and the mounting suspicion that he had been involved in the killings. One of the most telling pieces of evidence against the teenager was his inconsistent account of the night of the murders. At first, he claimed that he had been asleep and had no knowledge of what happened. However, as the investigation unfolded, police found evidence that contradicted this claim. The teenager's phone records indicated that he had been awake and active during the time of the murders, further fueling suspicion that he had been involved. Additionally, security footage from a neighbor's home showed the son leaving and returning to the house around the time of the killings, which added to the evidence against him. This led investigators to believe that the teenager was not simply an innocent bystander, but instead played a central role in the deaths of his parents. The trial of the Armstrong son began in 2018, and it quickly became clear that it was going to be a contentious and highly emotional case. On one hand, the prosecution argued that the teenager had murdered his parents in cold blood. They pointed to his behavior, his changing story, and the evidence that suggested he had been awake during the murders. On the other hand, the defense team maintained that the teenager was innocent and had been wrongly accused. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial and did not prove that the teenager had been involved in the murders. They also pointed to the strained relationship between the teenager and his parents, suggesting that there were other explanations for the family's tragic end. In the trial, the defense tried to paint a picture of a troubled teenager who had been dealing with significant mental health issues. They suggested that the boy had been pushed to his breaking point by the pressure of his family's expectations and struggles. After weeks of deliberations, the jury reached a verdict in 2018. In a surprising twist, the jury found the Armstrong son not guilty of the murders. The defense team had successfully cast doubt on the prosecution's case, particularly around the credibility of the evidence. The jury found that there was not enough concrete proof to convict him. The verdict shocked many, as the evidence against the teenager had been substantial. However, the defense had raised questions about the integrity of the investigation and the reliability of certain evidence. In the end, the jury sided with the defense, and the young man was acquitted of all charges. The legal battle in court was quite a challenge, sometimes emotional. For 19 hours, the juror deliberated over the fate of Antonio Jr. For 3 days, the prosecution team stated that they were completely deadlocked. That meant a mistrial.
It is improbable the jury can reach a verdict, and accordingly, because of that, the court declares a mistrial.
However, this did not mean that the case was over. The state gave an immediate statement wanting a retrial. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the case would be delayed. It was until 2022 when AJ was 23 years old. At this time, he had already fathered a son by the name Hendrix Antonio Armstrong, taking his grandfather's name, Antonio, a grandfather Hendrix would sadly never meet. After the second deliberation of November 2022, the jury again would hit the deadlock. However, in the year 2023, the unexpected happened after a third trial. 7 years since his parents died, AG was found guilty of his parents' murder. He was sentenced to a life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 40 years.
One, the state of Texas versus Antonio Armstrong Jr. We, the jury, find the defendant, Antonio Armstrong Jr., guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment. It's signed the foreperson of the jury.
For Murder Chronicles, my name is Sarah, and thank you so much for tuning in. And do you have an idea of a case that you would like our team to cover? If so, just leave it in the comment section. And in the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.